This God and universe vibrates complete. See?
It's the sermon.
I can project. Are we going?
We're rolling now.
Hi.
All right. Welcome, everybody.
We're back.
Yeah, back for another chat.
After we had a class in between.
Yeah, it was good fun. Had a great
That
turnout.
was fun. Went well.
Yeah, thanks for everybody that showed up live. And if you missed it, you can find the recording. We've posted that to the Late Cellar YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Well, today we're going to go a few different directions. We've got some mock orange to talk about. We're going to bring Neroli into the conversation. We're going to talk about Health Canada. We're going to talk about weeds, a number of different weeds, in particular Henbane and what the city of Calgary is doing. So some of those threads are coming from a viewer comment question. And as you know, if you ever watch one of these episodes, we'll see where we go, this way, that way.
Sometimes we don't know where we're going ourselves.
But we always have a good time. And
Yes.
cover lots of ground. And yeah, I know folks are enjoying it. We're enjoying it. So glad you're along for the ride.
Are we going to start here?
Sure, let's do that. Okay, so right now we've got In Bloom, In Blossom. Just grabbed a little bit off my tree.
Go in close.
Yeah,
There we go.
cool. Beautiful. Now, if only we could transfer the smell, the aroma.
This is a non-native shrub that is planted in a lot of gardens, and you'll find it in some city parks. And it's called mock orange. It doesn't grow oranges, I don't think.
Too bad.
But it's called mock orange because the flowers are identical in size, shape, and fragrance to a bitter orange that grows in Europe, particularly Italy. And many years ago, there was, I think, a duke who would have had a massive yardscape, and he had this beautiful daughter that was constantly depressed, just chronic depression. And once a year, when the orchards would be in bloom, this flower would come, and he'd look down from his den window and see her out there with her long blonde hair dancing in the sunlight in almost like a court, something you'd wear to a ball or whatever, fancy dress on, and she'd be twirling and whirling and dancing and skipping and so delighted. And then once the flowers dropped, she'd go back into her chronic depression. And he thought, what if there was a way to capture that fragrance for her year-round use? Maybe my daughter would grow up to have some sort of a life. So he put it upon the court alchemist, given some incentive like, have this by Tuesday or your scrotum will be on a pike in the town square, some reasonable incentive like that. So for the first time in, I think it was 1725, he managed to create an absolute that was just so beautiful, captured the flowers, and he was the Duke of a town in Italy, you can look it up, called Neroli. It's kind of slightly east in Italy. It's kind of a little bit here of the middle of Italy. It's called Neroli. And so that's where the essential oil got its name.
Wow.
It's either just known as orange blossom,
Yeah.
or most often called Neroli.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to put some Italian in there, hey? Yeah. So
The orange blossom flowers, they do have a bit more kind of thickness to them, like they're, at least the ones I've seen anyways. But yeah, but beautiful, and the aroma.
Oh, the petals, you mean?
Yeah, the petals, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, as you say, aromas.
I've never seen orange blossoms.
Yeah, I lived in Southern California for a very short time.
Okay.
I was at somewhat of a monastery, actually, where men were thinking about becoming monks or monks. Interesting story. Here's these monks that have given up all their worldly possessions, and there was one guy, he was a big deadhead, Grateful Dead. And he brought me into like this back room as the secret door, and he had set it up like this entire music studio.
Oh, well.
And he still had all his Grateful Dead collection with the most superb sound you've ever heard, with like a giant big screen TV. We'd watch all the shows and everything.
Well,
yeah.
So did that keep him from becoming of the faith?
Well, nothing wrong with a little dead on the
He'd-
side, right?
He'd be out there doing his sermon with a with a Grateful Dead T-shirt on underneath
Yeah, exactly.
his whatever it's called, smock.
Yeah. So one of my jobs at that place was I'd work in the kitchen a little bit, also work with the avocado and the citrus trees, and we did a pilgrimage. It was in Escondido, and we walked all day to get to Encinitas, which was on the coast. And this one moment, we were all walking along, and it was through an orange orchard.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, just like every step was. We're like, whoa! We looked down. Nothing but snails everywhere. The entire ground was covered in snails. By that time, we were already like, 10, 15 feet into this like minefield of snails. And the only thing to do was to run out. And,
Were they migrating or something, or they just lived there?
yeah, no idea. But it was actually on that same trip that I experienced a butterfly migration. Just literally surrounded, just like all these butterflies. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, well, some of them travel continentally,
It's amazing.
like
Yeah.
monarchs. Come up to Canada, but they always end up back around there.
Yeah,
That's their migratory path.
yeah. Anyways, that's my connection to orange blossom, Neroli. But
I'm trying to remember, was it the botanist names? I'm just remembering Lewisii.
that's right.
What's the Latin name?
Yeah, Lewisii. I can't remember,
Oh, okay.
but it's definitely in there. And then the common name, Lewis's mock orange,
Okay.
they call it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting. It's in the books, but there's not much that's written about it or its benefits, its properties, which sometimes, you know it just from smelling it, right?
Well, I've heard that you can make really great cunning out of it.
Oh, can you now? Yes.
I just heard that this morning, actually. It's
Yeah. All right. Here we go.
something very new to me.
Yeah. So this was prepared in 2022. So last year, as of this recording, because it's in my backyard. Huge. At first, when I first moved here, I had no idea what it was. I thought it was a dogwood, just kind of looking
Okay.
at the
Yeah,
branches,
yeah,
looking
yeah,
at the leaves,
yeah.
and then these flowers pop out, and I was like, wow. And so I finally got around to doing a bunch of experiments with it. So we made mock orange honey, and I absolutely love herbal honeys. I don't know how much, if you ever got into herbal honeys as a way to preserve, extract, and deliver.
Now, before you put that in my mouth, because I just had one a few minutes before the show.
Yeah.
For starters, I'm salivating already,
Yeah.
heavily. It's kind of like, did I mention bergamot in one of the episodes?
That's right. Yeah.
It's kind of like the bergamot thing.
Yeah.
I'm just salivating like crazy. But putting that in my mouth, I had a new taste about every 4 seconds
Oh, it's incredible.
for 2 minutes. Like it just new taste.
Yeah. Okay, let me top you up
Yeah, I don't even. That's a lot.
without it dripping off the spoon. There we are. And okay, you can see on the top of the lid there's the honey, but it's also kind of like some of the pollens and things that are in there. Honeys are one of the best ways to preserve and extract, especially flowers, that really light, delicate floral essence. Now, it's not a straight conversion with the mock orange, right? As you mentioned, I mean, there's a lot going on in terms of flavors, so it's going to pull out more. But a rose honey is phenomenal. I think we have to do an episode where I'll bring out like a dozen or more herbal honeys that I've got, and we'll just do a honey tasting. And we'll get you talking about rose, and I did a wormwood honey. It's like, I mean, there's no limit actually.
My only reference to that was that back to when I was just a sprout, as Terry would call a herbal sprout, I'd met a few people that were doing it with pansies or wild violets.
Right.
and especially with the wild violets, because they're much smaller than pansies. Like some pansies will fill your whole teacup. But
Yeah.
they'd warm up some honey just a bit to make it a little runnier, and stuff a jar with the violets, and then pour the warm honey in.
Yeah.
And especially for people that really hate winter, if you have tea in the morning and take a spoon of that honey,
Yeah.
violets look like little happy faces. And so you're all, winter, I gotta go shovel the sidewalks. Hate winter. But when you put those in your tea, all the little happy faces would come up and sort of whisper, "Don't worry, Blaine, winter won't last forever, spring's coming soon."
That's
You know,
right.
and because they look like cartoons.
Yeah.
There was one day, I don't think this ever came up with you on the show. My wife and I were on the back deck eating a mostly flower salad, and a lot of the flowers had come from the front yard, but begonias and things, but there was a lot of pansies in the flower boxes all around the deck.
Yeah.
And as I was eating the salad, I just got this really awful feeling and looked up, and the pansies were all watching us
Right.
with much disdain on their faces. And it actually spooked me enough that I think we had to go to the front porch to finish the salad, because
Right.
it was just too creepy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I almost felt like these pansies were going to somehow get out of the dirt and fly across the deck and rip my throat out or something.
There
It was
you
just
go.
crazy.
Yeah.
And I wasn't high on anything. You know, violets don't get you high.
No.
So pansies, common pansies, are viola tricolor, and they're fully edible as well. All of our wild pansies. There's one that comes up really early in the spring, just after the snow. That's a very intense blue, almost a tinge of purple in it, like a royal blue. That's Viola adunca, and it's called early blue violet. And then there's a yellow one that grows in the high country, and it comes out very early as well. Kind of, it might be right next, just a few feet from a snowdrift still, or ice pack. Comes up really early. There's a lily that does that as well, glacial lily. It's also yellow.
Yeah.
And this
This keeps going, eh? Yeah.
I'm still over salivating. And if anybody didn't catch that before, if you have problems with digestion in general, or if you don't usually, but you've just had a raging battle or argument or something with somebody and you're all uptight, soon as you get into the fight or flight mode, like we have that system so that if you really had to, you could try and outrun or beat up a tiger. And most of us will probably never have to fight off a tiger. But in life, there might be these little tigers that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So all it takes to shut off your entire digestive system is getting into an argument. You go into the
Right.
fight or flight response,
Yeah.
and what's happening with lunch doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So it goes dead. So we have to put a stop to it. So you take a drop or two of bergamot and just deep breathe it in. I mean, well, it was already happening anyway, but it's happening worse now.
Yeah.
As soon as, like Pavlov's dogs, if you remember who that was, or Google them if you want to, you could walk up behind me at a conference somewhere and sneak up behind me and whisper in my ear, bergamot, 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 and I'd probably be drool all over my tie.
Yeah.
You know, it's that distinctive reaction after doing it for so many years. But
Some people get
this is just incredible.
thinking about a lemon or something like
I'm
that.
gonna
too.
be
Yeah.
I'm gonna be half smiling for the rest of the show this morning. I think.
Cool. So
This is sell that for $1,000 a bottle.
right, there you go. Yeah, I better get out there and pick again. I did it once. I'm not sure if I'll do it again. And I also did a honey, so mock orange honey, mock orange hydrosol, and that one transferred quite well. And then I did a tincture, a mock orange tincture, and then I combined them all together into like a syrup. And then I gave that out last year at an open house, just kind of like we did on the weekend there. So everybody got a nice little bottle of it.
You got me thinking about Do you know the Foxfire books? You must.
Oh, totally.
There was what, 5 maybe?
Yeah,
Is it 5? Just
yeah.
3, 5?
I've got 3. That might have been all. I'm not sure if
okay.
there's more. Yeah.
So there's a recipe in there somewhere for an unusual amount of wild rose petals.
Okay.
And I remember reading it once thinking, who would ever have time to pick 4 pounds of wild rose petals? Like, it would never happen.
Yeah.
But a very dear friend of mine, Damon Johnson, in the city, we were out camping down in the Crow's Nest area, I think, and had gone up this, I don't want to say mountain, just a really big hill, I suppose, and came down a different way through a little valley. And the valley was just pink with roses. I'd never seen that concentration of wild roses before. And I think we had our lunch in just like a bread bag, like a Safeway bag or something. And so we just picked for several hours for no particular reason.
Right.
I was thinking, we can do something good with these. They were just so plentiful.
Yeah.
So when we got back to the city, my next door neighbor, unusual name for a man, Bev, he's gone now, Bev Bander, he was quite a well-known musician. And he had, every fall, his wife and him would come back from a visit to the interior with crates full of peaches and things, and she did a lot of canning.
Right.
And he would take all of the skins that you take off apricots and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, some people do. And make a mash, ferment it.
Right.
And then he had a really, really, really good still.
Oh, perfect.
And he made this home brew that, like, blue flame, no taste, just alcohol burn.
Yeah.
Just this really, really, really good home brew. So I got some of that from him, and we stuffed a couple of, no, it was just 1 gallon. Once they were wet, they all fit in 1 gallon jug. And we filled it right up with the home brew and shook that every couple of days and let it go for a few weeks. And the annual Wild Rose Camp Out Herb Walk weekend was coming up.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I have to take this along. So I sweetened it with some corn syrup, I think. And we quickly agreed that this was a cross between, it was so good, it was a cross between Grand Marnier and, oddly enough, Chanel No. 5.
Right.
All right. So
Yeah.
but the flavor was really unique, right? So I lost a lot of it that weekend, but anybody who got into it readily agreed the next morning that they were crawling back to their tent. I'm going to use the word shit-faced,
Right.
but still smelling like a rose.
Okay,
So-
I'm gonna have to grab 2 things for
Yes.
a little show and tell. So I'm gonna go downstairs. I'm gonna grab something from there.
Okay.
Maybe tell the folks a little bit about rose and kind of like herbal benefits, properties.
Okay.
And then I'll grab these 2 very special things we're gonna try.
In the Muslim religion, anything to do with rose is associated with the heavens. And it's interesting that if you can check with the right equipment, you can check the frequency that anything can sustain. Even the glass that the water is in has a frequency. It's made of glass, and anything, that's ayahuasca actually, anything hanging from my neck has a frequency. I have a collective frequency. And from all of the things that we work with, like essential oils, rose has the highest frequency. So it's sort of a confirmation that we can compare it with things that are above us. Right? So a lot of people think about rose like on Valentine's Day, hi honey, here's your roses. And the roses that are hybridized, the ones that we do have, the long-stemmed roses, those didn't really grow anywhere. I think those were created, not artificially, but through selective hybridization, where the rose that we buy for perfume and such are the bush roses, the ones that are about this big and have many layers to them and so forth. They're exceedingly fragrant. And we had, just seeing you with the bottle here.
Yeah.
We never got to make it again. Back to the homebrew story, the wild rose. I just had a nice chat the other day I don't know if anybody out there watching might know a fellow named Harold Finkelman. He's very well known in the city and has traveled all over the world, and he's told the story of the wild rose liqueur to probably hundreds of thousands of people
Right.
all over the world. And we tried to make it after the fact using store-bought vodka or cognac, and it was okay,
Right.
but compared to the original, it was always just okay. It wasn't brilliant.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me that a lot of extracts have to be made with like the highest proof alcohol you can get,
Yeah.
and then water it down later,
Right.
as opposed to having something that was already at, say, 45% or something, you know, because I've tasted homemade liqueurs that people have done with raspberries or whatever, and they're nice, but they're never as punchy as the bought stuff, because the bought stuff's always using higher proof.
Right.
Right? So anyway, we mostly associate rose working with the oils. One of two reasons: it's one of the nicest things to use in skincare, and also the association with perfumes, of course.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this many times in your classes about back to some of the neurotransmitters that you can only achieve with rose, good chocolate, or having an orgasm.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And
The PEA.
so there's something to that whole perfume thing. It's a little past perfume. It's not just smelling pretty. It's almost like a warm up for something exciting to happen soon, I hope. You know? And
Roses and romance.
yeah, and so we certainly use it in a lot of beautiful fragrances just for its beauty. But in skincare, it's very good, especially for aging skin.
Right.
There's a thing that can happen, and it's literally called rosacea,
Right.
because the skin gets quite a dark reddish color. And you'll see this often with people my age or whatever. They might get even a raised ridge up their forehead or something like that, or you can get it in blotches. And anyway, rose, usually the hydrosol, like for many years now, the first thing I do, people talk about in skincare and hair care often refer to pH, the pH of your hair. And hair doesn't have a pH. This is dead. This is like fingernails. It was growing once, and now it's just dead hair. This doesn't have a pH, but the coating on it does. Your skin doesn't have a pH, but the coating on it does, right?
Yeah.
So Calgary tap water is about 8.2 on average.
Right.
An old friend of mine that I met at one of the Wild Rose Herb Walks, actually, and we're both musicians. I ended up playing with him. Anyway, that's another whole story. So even just tap water, like you notice that if you lay in a bathtub for too long, your skin starts to kind of shrivel up. And it's not shriveling down, it's shriveling out. You're allergic to tap water because it's too alkaline.
Right.
All right? The coating on your skin wants to be around 5.5. And so even just laying in a bathtub, it makes you go up 2 dress sizes, kind of things, because your skin is swelling.
And
So
add to that soaps, which are
Oh,
alkaline.
Yeah. Most
well.
soaps, there's very few. Having heard this from enough people for enough decades, even J&J finally came up with a soap some years ago, and I applauded them for it, that was called 5.5.
Right.
Because they were selling a soap that was matched to your pH. But you still lose that
Right.
when you put it in the tap water.
Yeah.
Right? So
It's this idea of the acid mantle, right?
yes,
On the
yeah,
skin.
the acid mantle, thank you, is what we call it. And so even tap water takes that away. So the first thing you want to do whether you've just washed your face before bedtime, or you've had a shower or a bath or anything like that, is neutralize that. So it's nice to have something quite acidic to snap you back from the 8.2 to a closer pH to what the acid mantle should be. And guess what? Hydrosols, all of them, every single one of them
Yeah.
is acidic.
Yeah, totally.
And that's why they don't need preservatives.
Right.
They last incredibly long. Some of them, some research was done on this because some of us had hydrosols that were around for a decade or longer, and nothing ever went wrong with them.
Yeah.
And some people found that they had hydrosols that within a year to 2 years would get a little bit of mold or something growing on the dipstick in your spray bottle, something like that.
Right.
And enough consciousness grew on that it came back to perhaps it was just contamination when they were working with the equipment, and people were almost washing their hands in the hydrosol and that sort of thing, that
Right.
that it had gotten contaminated.
Yeah.
So people started being a lot more careful of making them, equipment and all of that. Anyway, we're getting way off handle with the back to Neroli.
Well, it's a good topic. I mean, hydrosols. I want to pull in a couple of threads there. So when you mentioned about kind of a natural low pH, acidic, perfect for the skin, matches that, and this is very different than literally adding essential oils to water. Right? Some people trying to like recreate a hydrosol, totally different, right?
Well,
hydrosol,
you can do that a little bit for some, like I talked about that on the weekend,
Right.
for some applications.
Yeah,
But
nothing wrong with that.
But you're not getting the pH story that we're talking about right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then witch hazel, when we talk about preservation, for some reason that one has been regulated to have alcohol as a percentage added to it as a preservative.
There's very few out there that don't have alcohol added. And
Yeah.
once you realize that, if you have either really oily skin or just larger than average pores, where you can just kind of see your pores from quite some distance off, witch hazel is a popular choice, but most of us don't want alcohol on our face. So there are, you can get witch hazel that doesn't have any
Right.
added alcohol. I don't know what they're doing to it, but
Yeah. But the rose, back to the rose, I know that's been a part of your skincare routine for a long time. Of all the hydrosols, that
Yeah.
one has that affinity for the skin, being slightly astringent. You know, you come out of the shower, you've had that alkaline water on your skin, the warmth kind of opens up the pores. In my
Yep.
understanding, is it just kind of a nice, like it's a toner in that sense?
exactly, that's what people call them, as toners. So the first thing you want to do is blot your face dry, and no running to answer the phone. It's important that you do this right away.
Yeah.
You missed with whatever your toner is, so we're talking about Neroli or rose hydrosols now. And again, no going to the phone or the doorbell. It's got to be right now, or you have to start over.
Yeah.
Right now, while your skin is still quite almost dripping wet with the hydrosol, is when you apply the oil blend or skin cream or whatever that you've chosen to use, and pat that on and then lightly blend it in, because the cream or oil, all creams have some oil in them, is going to help lock in the moisture, and you'll use less product.
Right.
Like a lot of people overuse skin creams and things and end up clogging pores.
Right.
And that becomes a problem. You can end up with acne just because you're taking too much care of your face.
Yeah.
You know, we found in the Moscato schools there were a lot of mostly young people and far more females than males, and they're learning techniques and then practicing on each other all the time and so forth. And some of the students who'd never had any skin problems on anywhere on their body, their face or otherwise, through their teens, etc., were breaking out in acne.
Right.
Because they were using coconut oil that wasn't, it was full, the coconut oil you want to eat.
Right.
So they put it in a little warmer, but it's a saturated fat. So when it gets into your pores, it clogs your pores, which then get contaminated and you're getting pimples and such.
Right.
So just use a different oil.
Yeah.
So you can get coconut oil that's been separated so that the saturated portions are removed, and then you can use it for massage oil.
Right. Interesting.
I don't know, see, there I go on a tangent on a tangent on a tangent. Shut up, Blaine. Okay. So
Well, the rose hydrosol, I'll just carry on with that. Amazing. Spritzing your face, and even at the end of the day, you know, like I'll wash my face, and then I'll get a nice like hit of rose. Like it stays on the skin all day. And you won't necessarily smell it throughout the day, but as you then to go kind of like, wash your face for whatever reason, like often like, oh yeah, there's that rose again.
Traveling by airplane, I will always have a little 2-ounce sprayer in my carry-on of rose water. And you get to that point where you finally got your luggage and you're stepping outside waiting for a cab or something, and there's just that stink in the air at the airport from all of the fumes and stuff.
Yeah.
And or maybe you didn't get much sleep because you had to be up extra early to catch your flight, that sort of thing, and you're a little bit tired. But you got that smell in the air and whatever. It's just nice to just stop for a moment. You don't even have to sit down. And as Malcolm said, just take out your rose water. This would be the same, and just a light mist. And you just take that moment that's for nobody else. It's just for you. And just inhale a little bit of it. And it dries very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's just, because of its pH, it's mildly astringent. Gravity and time are sucking your face, even as I speak. Gravity and time are sucking your face off your skull. That's why as we get older, everything gets a little baggy and saggy. And the more that you've incorporated astringents into your daily life, the more, with every little dose, it's just pushing things up again.
Yeah. I mean, you've done really well. Like,
it's anti-gravity.
You don't really have any wrinkles.
Well, I got a few laugh lines and things, but
yeah, but that's from enjoying yourself.
When
what a good laugh.
when you see actors and things, one of my favorite male actors is Robert Redford.
Right.
And I've seen some recent pictures of him, and it's like, I hate to say this about somebody, but he's aged worse than anybody else from Hollywood that I know. Like, his skin's a mess.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't somebody like that be taking better care of their skin? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a mystery to me, and I hate to dash him because he's a hero for me, but just an example of simple little things. And most men don't take care of their skin, So I'm very proud of, whether they're just clients or friends of mine that have picked up on that do take care of their skin.
Yeah.
And of course smoking's one of the worst things.
Right.
Because it's oxidizing.
Right.
So the more antioxidants you have in your diet, it's going to affect your skin as well.
Yeah, and skin being your largest organ, you want to feed it, nourish it from the outside as well as the inside. It's the kind of the least vital organ, so it's kind of in the pecking order or the feeding order of the body. It's going to be last in that regard because it is exterior, because it's non-vital compared to the other ones.
Well, if we clog all your pores, you have minutes to live.
Yeah.
So it's
for sure. Yeah.
It is a pretty important organ.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So anyways, back to the roses. I got this image, you talk about, when are you ever going to pick that many roses? Well, last year I was on a mission, like every single day. When the roses were out, I was picking them. And I wanted to make a rose honey. And so similar, ended up creating a syrup, rose honey. So rose petals into honey, amazing. And then also did a rose tincture, so I could combine those two together. So that's what we're gonna try now. And then these are wild roses. These are like literally one tiny thin petal. It's not like a cultivated rose where you can have a nice big
You just get five of them up.
Yeah. So I did a very limited run, a small batch, and you're gonna taste it now. So, yeah. Normally this would have a dropper on it, but this one doesn't. This is my last bottle of this one.
Well, that's enough.
Okay, we'll see what you think of this. This will raise
I
your
want to
vibration.
smell it first. I'll smell the bottle out.
Yeah, totally.
The way we stuck the spoon in my mouth, the honey only hit half of my tongue.
Oh.
And the other half of my tongue was whining.
I mean, it's an energy that just melts you. Just like, it softens, just like, whoa.
Well, I'm enticed here to do this little thing that I do. Credits to follow. This God and universe vibrates complete. Some make it a sound so sweet. Vibrations reach on up to become light, and then through gamma and out of sight. Between the eyes and ears there lie the sounds of color and the light of a sigh. To hear the sun, what a thing to believe, but it's all around, if we could but perceive. To know ultraviolet, infrared, and X-rays, beauty defined in so many ways. 2 notes of the chord, that's our full scope. But to reach the chord is our life's hope. To name the chord is important to some, and they give it a word, and the word is Om. I'm still getting the new flavors. Even doing talking with you that, it's just, that's magic, man.
Totally.
I don't want to quit smiling.
You don't have to. Yeah, let that reverberate. Woo. Yeah, magic stuff.
Well, we're just going to make anybody watching jealous here.
For sure. Cool.
Okay, enough with you guys.
Well, one more.
Oh.
This one's also rose.
Oh.
So this one's got a really interesting story. I just opened it to kind of get a sense. It's not quite as potent as when I first got it, but a number of years ago, your friend and mine, Dr. Terry Willard, when he was moving from Springbank out to the coast, he had a garage sale.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, and unbelievable. There were some things he was like, "Oh no, Malcolm, you can't take that."
I wouldn't part with that.
Yeah, but he did. Look at that, just absolute gorgeous, like bottle. Just that alone is worth it. But this here, it's got to be some sort of rose concoction. I don't even know. He didn't know. Like, I don't know what the story is. It's not super potent on the smell, but maybe it's like rose brandy, or I don't know. So we'll try just a wee drop, and more should come out in terms of notes. I'll see what you think.
That's pretty full.
So yeah, what the history of this, what the story is, all I know is I get something very floral, definitely rose. Right? It's almost like a perfume. I mean, is that not Grand Marnier mixed with Chanel No. 5?
Well, the soapy finish is just getting to me now. I have to wonder if it's what somebody tried to do, given what I described, where they tried to do it with some brandy.
Yeah.
Rose petals and brandy, maybe. Could be.
There we go. Anyways, I think when I got it from him, it might have been about there. So every so often, I bring it out and do a little wee taste and sample. So we'll just pot that there. And I've got another one of his, different bottle, just as gorgeous. And I believe that is some different Chinese herbs, including gecko and other things in it. So maybe we'll give that a try one time in the future. But I thought we'd...
Gecko the lizard?
Yeah, it's considered a herb in Chinese medicine.
Oh, that's why I see those little dried them on sticks.
That's right, in Chinatown. Yeah. Typically it would be added to soups. Ron Teagarden of Dragon Herbs, based out of California, he's got a blend he calls Gecko Rock Climber. I mean, you think about the regenerative abilities, properties of the gecko, right? Like, you know, it can regrow its tail. Maybe
They can move that fast?
Yeah. They can climb walls. Similar to kind of like, you know, the deer antler, the elk antler.
Right. Velvet.
Yeah.
Wow.
There we are.
We're pausing too much.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so transportive. I mean, this to me is like, you know, this is what I love about herbal medicine. It's like creates a state shift, elevation.
That bit of prose, by the way, was from the Moody Blues
No way.
in, I think, 1962,
Oh, very cool.
at the heart of the psychedelic, or what was known as acid rock days.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're coming full circle to Grateful Dead again here.
And that album, what they used to do was start, side one, track one, would have a piece of prose, and then side two, last track, would have an exit
Right.
verse.
It's kind of a bookend.
And that particular album was called In Search of the Lost Chord. And you can actually YouTube that.
Amazing.
I have...
And then you can say, who did it better, Blaine Andrusek or Moody Blues? You get my vote.
Well, that's why I add just a little British to my voice when,
Right.
when I recite it.
Yeah.
But that's one of the very few albums that I have 3 copies of,
Right.
one of which is not opened. One of which was from the early days when I might wake up after a large party and hear something skipping, and there'd still be a record on the turntable with a cigarette butt and some chip dip on it. And we used to hand wash records with dish soap after parties.
Oh, no way.
And then the second copy was when we finally grew up and started handling records better and
Right.
used their sleeves and all of that.
Yeah.
And when I had the opportunity to buy a brand new one here a couple of years ago, that one's unopened.
Right.
And now I don't even have a turntable anymore. We'll see where the future goes. I shouldn't be that
Yeah.
thinking that way, but I certainly can't set up a full-size stereo in the care home.
No.
So
Yeah, maybe one of the nurses or doctors, kind of like the monk at the monastery. He's got a secret back room. They're going to open it up one day.
there was a guy when I used to do a lot of photography for oil companies, and I was in the Arctic a bit, and there's a place called Norman Wells that when they were worried during World War II, they were worried about running short of not so much for fuel, but as lubricant. They were going to run out of oil for all the ships and planes and tanks and things. And somebody had noticed that in Alexander Mackenzie's diary, they were paddling on the Mackenzie River, and guess where that name came from. Mackenzie's group in his diaries reported that there were places where this sticky black stuff was oozing out of the sand on the banks of the river.
Yeah.
And it was not pleasant to smell. It was kind of sticky and whatever. And so rereading notes, somebody realized there's oil all over the Mackenzie River Delta.
Right.
So I was up there photographing these artificial islands. That there's places where as you get closer to the sea, that it broadens out into deltas. And they're putting these artificial islands in for drilling rigs. And so there's a village has developed there called Norman Wells, where they have an actual refinery. And you can get, there's no roads there. You can only fly there or go by a skidoo or something. And in the winter, in the summer, they'd run barges up the Mackenzie River for supplies. But I met this one fellow, much as your monk story. He was living in a painted white but log cabin that had chinks missing and stuff, so that on a brisky, windy day, wind was blowing right through the place. And he invited me over to see. He was quite enticed because nobody else he'd met for years had a Hasselblad. And he had equipment that I was only dreaming of at that time in my career.
Right.
He had full 35 millimeter projector, like I'm going to the movies.
Right.
He was filming.
Yeah.
And a grand piano
Wow.
and about 20 other instruments and this massive stereo.
Yeah.
Because he was making all this money working for the rigs,
Right.
but had nothing else to spend it on.
Yeah.
So he was just this incredibly eccentric fellow.
Wow.
Yeah, you never know who you're going to meet where in some hole in the ground kind of place, right?
Well, it's funny. The other thing about this monk that loved the Grateful Dead, renounced everything except his Grateful Dead music collection, and he was trading on the stock market. I think much of it he donated to the religious organization he was a part of, but
Wow.
it's interesting. As you were sharing about that kind of oil oozing up, really, really fascinating place in downtown Los Angeles. It's called the La Brea Tar Pits. We're literally, even still to this day, there's like oil bubbling up from the ground.
Oh.
It's these tar pits, like literally, like imagine being downtown Calgary, but there's just kind of this little section of a park, and it's got a fence around it and a little museum and that kind of thing. And out of those pits, they have dug up woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, like giant, ancient sloths, and they've got all the bones there, and they've been able to like really understand so much about history because over the time, the thousands of years, like animals have come to that spot, got basically sucked into these tar pits and then totally preserved.
Yep.
And you can go there and you can see it. Like even throughout the park, there's little bits of like oil that's coming up through the grass, and it's so fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just don't smoke.
No. Which for Los Angeles' air quality.
No smoking.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were going to cover other things.
So we were going to cover
nonsense about henbane.
Right. Okay. So this kind of comment question came in. I was unaware of this. That the city of Calgary is, I guess, planning to try to eradicate all the henbane that grows throughout the city. We'll give it just a little bit of a background on henbane, but I'll say, like, yes, it is a weed. I know you haven't seen it so much, but
I was surprised because they're calling it a noxious weed, and I'd only seen it once, and there was two plants side by side.
Yeah. So
I'd never hunted for it, but
right.
it's kind of like, what's that? And in fact, I didn't even recognize it. I had to look it up. I had to key it out.
Right.
And oh, this is henbane. Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's very common, at least in the northwest of Calgary. You often find it kind of like, ditches or kind of the sides of the road, going up a slope. And it's very easy to spot because it kind of leaves the skeleton, the next year after it dies back. And the little seed heads, totally poisonous, but everything is a matter of dose. So Denis Manzer, he talks about there are 4 stages of poisoning with henbane. The 4th stage being death.
Stay tuned for part 4, but maybe leave after part 3. Yeah.
But amongst that, there's you enter the stage of hilarity, and then you enter the stage of like, painlessness, fearlessness, like total like, and then the 3rd is you just get this like, it will slow your heart down. It's just like boom, boom, boom. This big throbbing sensation. And then if you go a little bit further, then you're going to keel over. But we actually talked a little bit about henbane on a previous episode. It might have been number 2, maybe 3 that we talked about. It was one of the key ingredients in the witch's flying ointment.
Right.
That's typically applied topically. Fascinating plant, but definitely an advanced herb. Again, most people would have no idea. Most people wouldn't see it. They'd walk right by it. But it's fairly prolific, and of course, sure, it can be dangerous. But again, why they're trying to eradicate, I have no idea. Like even like goat's beard, like salsify. That's another one. Okay, it kind of looks like a dandelion, gets these big, puffy seed heads, but
it's not a pretty plant.
Yeah, people they rip that up all the time. It's like, just eat the flower head, Have a snack. Get rid of the seed head by eating the flowers. Or I've never worked with the root, but I've heard the root can be eaten and is tasty as well.
Get it in the spring.
Get it in the spring, yeah. Or flower heads, right now, kind of midsummer. Henbane, yeah, I think it just speaks to, ignorance. You had mentioned, maybe it was some city bureaucrat that's like, oh, well, that's poisonous. We got to make everybody safe. Like we have to get rid of this.
I think it's more likely that some bureaucrat realized that as part of that lack of safety, there would be young people that were going to experiment with it
right.
to get high
Yeah.
and ultimately kill themselves.
Yeah. It's kind of like I remember going into a supermarket, grocery store type of thing, and they limited the amount of nutmeg you could buy.
Oh, yes. I remember the letter.
Yeah.
My parents had a corner store.
Right.
I was in about, I'm not sure what year that would have been, grade 9 or something like that. And we got an actual letter saying that we couldn't let anyone under legal age buy nutmeg without a signed note from their mother.
Right.
It was like you come with a grocery list. We couldn't sell, because there were kids, once I was older than high school, there were kids out, my parents' store was right beside the high school I went to earlier, and there'd be kids out back. Sometimes they'd made a pipe out of an apple.
Right.
You get like the stem from a coffee perk or something and bore a hole and drill a little hole in it and then put some tinfoil in it, tape it up, poke holes in it. They had apple pipes and they were smoking nutmeg.
Right.
And that summer, 23 teenagers died in Canada from nutmeg.
Yeah.
Because a little bit of it was like you're kind of catching a buzz, so you want one more puff.
Yeah.
Good night.
Right. Yeah.
So I never thought of that until now.
I've tried nutmeg. I've never smoked it actually, but I took a whole, what do you call them, like nut?
It is a nut.
Yeah. And ate that. I was high for like 3 days. It was kind of one of those things of like, oh, still, you go to bed, you wake up, you're like, whoa, my vision is still a little bit,
Wonky.
Yeah, wonky, glassy, kind of like you're looking through a glass. Like, I wouldn't repeat it. It wasn't like.
But we put it in eggnog.
Yeah, the right amount. Yeah. So, anyways, we're not condoning that. Be tread carefully if one is going to experiment with that. But yeah.
But I don't know how. Well, if it's a noxious weed, then it's a noxious weed.
Right.
But something, I know Terry had gone through this, and I did it myself when I was first starting Herb Walks, where before we were, well, in my case, even illustrating books myself, eventually, as a photographer, but doing plant walks for staff of the city of Calgary.
Right.
And using the city of Calgary's own published noxious weed guide as the handout for the class, because over half of the plants that were in the noxious weed list were actually on our list of things we wanted to talk about as food or medicine.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were kind of looking at each other, kind of going, it's on page 6.
Yeah. Brilliant.
But if it's a noxious weed, it's a noxious weed.
But again, that's perception, though.
Yep.
Right? It's totally perception. I get it. If you want a nice football field, soccer field, people to play on, and you don't want thistles, okay, we're going to designate that area. But just because people don't like the sight of dandelions or whatever, right? So that would be my big concern. What are they going to use to try and eradicate this thing? Is that even possible? I think it's it's kind of like the war on drugs. It's you don't win that, right, by taking those kinds of measures. So
they could probably produce a very inexpensive pamphlet that went out with your next utility bill to just ask every homeowner to keep an eye out for it, rather than hire a bunch of people to go, well, I think they're doing that anyway. They're asking people to, if you see this, call us, we'll come and dig it up.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I had heard. Yeah.
Right. So, anyways, what grows amongst us, Henbane. And another one, since we're on the kind of topic of bureaucrats, let's get into Health Canada. So very recently, maybe you've seen some of the posts, the hashtag SOS, Save Our Supplements. Health Canada is taking their agenda further. This has been going on for 20 years, at least.
A long time, and a lot of meetings and a lot of expense. And as far as I was concerned, the last set of rules that we put in place after 10 years of meetings they were polite at first getting all of the so-called stakeholders involved, which is why I was there,
Right.
that might be affected by this. And so many things had to be considered because, for example, you can't take all of these herbs away because it's almost becoming racist against some of the
Right.
indigenous people
Yeah.
and a lot of their medicines, as well as a lot of the Asian herbs,
Right.
various things. You know, so they were almost worried about a civil revolt,
Yeah.
which was possible.
I mean, that's even more of a hot topic today,
But we ended up with the health protection branch ended up with very achievable rules, guidelines for what is called an NPN, a natural product number.
Yeah.
And if you're selling something that's for internal use, medicinally, it has to have an NPN on it. And it's not that expensive to get unless things have changed.
It has, yeah.
Has it?
Yeah, and that's part of it, what's going to be coming out in this new regulation, which, as of 3 days ago, everyone was like, we got us right to your MPs and trying to get this, they pushed it right through. It went through the Parliament, through the Senate.
Yeah.
It's now law.
Hiding in the care home, I didn't catch any of that.
I mean, it happened so quick, so quick. So now our only hope is to kind of repeal it. And I've been saying since day one, I mean, people should just not comply. Like businesses, I mean, we're self-enforcing it. Like I know a local health food store, they will not take any product without an NPN because that's what,
Yeah.
they're supposed to have, kind of thing. But yeah, you would have to have somebody, our mutual friend, Yara Willard, runs Harmonic Arts. He says you got to be making more than $1 million a year just to have the budget to consider getting NPNs. Otherwise, it's not worth it. Now, with this kind of going up a level, and there'll be, there's more regulations, there's more costs, there's probably going to be more enforcement. Anybody under that size will likely, possibly, I mean, there's a lot of speculation, not be able to be in business, because if you can't afford that, you can't be in it, especially with increased fees. But it's several $1,000s per product. And previous, you would be able to submit, a health claim backed either by science or backed by traditional use, right? Historically used, traditionally used. Apparently that's gone now. You can't use traditional use as a justification. And I remember Terry ran into trouble because he submitted both and he got rejected because he's like, well, you've added both. We only want one. And the other totally absurd thing is you can only pick one health claim, right? So you think of a herb that's got 12, 15 different uses, like cat's claw, right? Well, are you picking anti-inflammatory? Because that's all you're allowed.
That's for the labeling.
Yeah, for the labeling. Yeah. And I mean, this is a major rant I could go on a long time
about. If I had to do that for something like lavender oil, I would have to just pick smells nice. Because
do you got some signs for that? We need.
There's this many uses for lavender oil, right?
Yeah, there's such absurdity around it. I mean, not only are we limited with our access, like the States is far more free to access natural products than we are. There's a larger population that might factor into it, but they've got a greater diversity. They've got higher strengths. They've got, you name it. There's already gatekeepers at the border that won't allow certain things over. If I bring in a product from the States, very oftentimes I might have to relabel it just because of the name. Like, so for instance, in Canada, you cannot use the word tonic. It's illegal. Yeah, it implies a health claim that can't be substantiated. It's totally absurd. Colloidal silver, max 100 parts per million. That's all you're allowed. Can't produce anything higher than 100 parts per million.
Is that even therapeutic?
No. It can have some efficacy, but it's not really like
what it should be.
Could be. Yeah. No, it's totally absurd. And they have just taken it to the next level. And they tried this back in 2008, and from my understanding, there was enough of a public pushback that they kind of backed off a little bit. But this one, just it came out and then pushed right through. It's now law, and we'll yet to see. But there's all kinds of speculation that it could shut down entire industries, like naturopathic doctors. The medicines that they would normally prescribe, they won't be able to have access to it. companies that are in the States that are manufacturing this stuff to get it into Canada. There's already, issues around, okay, you need French English, you need, okay, fair enough, right? Got to change some labels.
Yep.
But now with this regulatory process, like each product, especially if it's a new product, the upfront costs, they're just not going to do it. The Canadian market is so small, it's not worth their time, compared to business as usual within the States. So that's a big barrier, plus new companies starting. Existing companies might end up going out of business if they can't, get to the level. Harmonic Arts is an example. NPNs, they have tried all their, not I want to say all, but many of their formulas they had. They had like an anti-inflammatory one, a pain relief one. They've had to pull them because Health Canada would not approve an
Oh,
NPN.
I am so sad to hear that.
Yeah, so it's...
I thought we were safely past all of that.
No, unfortunately not. Yeah.
Round 2, here we go.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it's on the heels of the last 3 years where people literally got to experience, in their face, of this kind of one-track mind medical mentality of, it has to be done this way. It's like, well, but I'm going to choose this way, I'm fine. I can take control of my health. I can make my own decisions. Oh, no. I remember there was, the absurdity of the Canadian Dietitians Association, whatever they're called, right? Like right off the bat, they put out a public statement. You cannot boost your immunity, right? And so they put boost in quotation marks as if it was kind of a word play. Well, there's nothing that will boost your immunity, right? It's like... They wanted people to interpret, well, there's nothing you can do, which is totally absurd, right? There's things you can support your immunity, you can stimulate your immunity.
I think my blood pressure is going up just listening to you right now.
Okay, let's get the rose back out.
No, it's okay. But seriously, that's just...
Yeah. So what do you do? I mean, yes, there's letter writing, but it feels like we're begging, we're groveling these bureaucrats that know nothing, or our MPs that are kind of a third, distance removed, like, oh, please, don't do this. But what else do we do? Non-compliance is one thing. The kind of letter writing. I think that has value. Don't just send off an email. If you're going to do a form, like a letter, like type it out, but handwrite something of it. So if you've got 3 paragraphs that's typewritten, do one little paragraph that you handwritten, mail it. You don't even need a stamp. You can send it. Don't just send it to your MP, because here in Alberta, right, you've got kind of this whatever Ottawa says Ontario, because they've got the majority. It's like Conservatives as the opposition can say, do whatever they want, but it still goes through. They really have no power to change anything. So Send it to the Prime Minister, send it to like every MP, send it to senators.
Does he know how to read?
He was a high school teacher, drama teacher.
That's right. Yes, he must. Yes.
Yeah. What did he left with? A $2.5 million don't say anything disclosure with one of his students. Yeah. Yeah. And if worse comes to worse, there's always the black market. But that's not how we want to live. We want to have these things accessible to all. Only some people will go that. It's like we might be able to get away with that, and we want to empower people with their own skills. But it should be out in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Because more and more people are coming to it, and I think that's the fear. It's the pharmaceutical industry that's, these natural health products, they're dangerous, and absolutely, there's risk to everything. But never mind that pharmaceuticals, when even properly prescribed and taken, third largest killer in the world, North America for sure, at least.
Yeah.
So everything has its risks.
Yeah, I used to have some of those stats at the back of my tongue when I was still teaching full-time, about how many millions of people a year die from federally approved drugs.
Right. Yeah.
It's astonishing.
Yeah. Even properly prescribed, taken with the right dose. Like, this is not like, she just took the whole bottle.
Yeah.
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 Iatrogenics. And, I get it. So, anyways, I think foundationally to all this, it's like listening to these interviews. It's building your knowledge about, wild medicine, plant food medicine that they will never be able to take away, even if they're still trying to eradicate the henbane, and other noxious weeds. That should be the foundation, and then do what we can to try and save access within the commercial and the public realm. But
I've had two issues come up for me selling product. One of them was with bug spray.
Right. Yeah.
And
and sunscreen's another one too. But yeah, bug spray, that's like hands off. You cannot say anything related to what it might actually do.
Right.
Yeah.
So
how'd you get around that?
People were getting creative there for a while, but now I just jumped to a different part of the same story. But it's not that long ago that I saw a fairly large article in the Calgary Herald that was "Scientists discover how DEET works," and I literally dropped the paper, picked it up again. Are you kidding?
Right.
After all these years of, I remember when I was a kid using full-strength DEET. At times you could pick up a transistor radio to go to the beach, and some of the handle was sticking to your skin by the time you got to the beach because the bug spray melted plastic.
Right.
And they finally figured out how it worked. But anyway, yeah, I got called in over my bug spray, and I can't remember what it was called at the time. Might have been something like Bug Off.
Right. Yeah.
People have used names like that, But so I finally got the call from a very polite woman on the phone, and we talked about who I was and my history and how much I was making and all of that. And I thought she had already seized, because that had happened a year or two before. They'd gone to some of our bigger stores, like Community, for example.
Yeah.
Nice but not overly dressed couple comes into the store. You got any of that? Can we help you? Yeah, got any of that? Like all natural bug spray. And they just go in, look at the labels, and go get a shopping cart and take it all off the shelf.
Right.
Out to their truck. They just taking stuff off the shelf. Right?
Yeah.
So I knew a few people that were keeping it in stock, but in a garbage can in the back room.
Right.
And unless you recognize the customer, you know them personally, you're not getting any kind of thing.
Yeah.
Undercover ops. But we had a very polite conversation, and
They always
I thought she'd already seized it. It was from a shop out in Cochrane. And I guess I misinterpreted the phone call. But I said, "Oh, if you haven't thrown that out yet, it really works well, so you keep it for yourself." And she said, "Oh, Blaine, I didn't seize anything yet.
Right.
But I'll be back next week, and if it's still on the shelf, I'm taking it."
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
They send the polite ones first, and then the guys.
No, the same lady would have come back. But
Right.
She was, I thought, kind enough, especially that it was in written form. I got an envelope about that thick of paper covering there was all forms and stuff that had to be filled out.
Yeah.
For me to do it properly. And I got back to her and explained to her that the scope of my business and how small it was by general standards, and that I make net profit $200 a summer on the bug spray that I sell.
Yeah.
So how about I can't afford to spend, it wasn't a lot, it was $2,800 or something.
Yeah.
To get it registered as whatever. And I said, so how about we'll just agree that I won't make it anymore.
Right.
And but I said, I'm just kind of curious, because I was in the shower and I was thinking about, but it just works so much. It just works. It's like the cat's meow. I said, what if I call it cat's meow? And she paused very politely and said, well, as long as there's nothing to do with the word bug on the label, it's no longer my department.
Right.
And she kind of giggled and said, good idea. She was kind of working with me a little bit,
Yeah.
But then I said, but there must be a person like you that handles all the animal product. So if I call it cat's meow, it's going to suggest there must be a cat lady person that's going to be out there looking for it. And she kind of sadly went, oh, you're probably right.
Yeah.
So I better just quit then. Okay.
Right.
And that's where it ended.
Jeez.
And nothing was seized, and I kept making it like officially as a practitioner I can still blend. I can, what's the word I'm missing here? I can, when you blend something for somebody one-on-one.
Oh, well, you're, yeah, customizing kind of thing.
I know, but there's a word I'm missing. Anyway, I can still make things for my own patients.
Yeah.
It's not going on a shelf where an unknowing consumer, like one of the government meetings I was at, I think it was with Ray Dunphy when she was still alive, and we heard the numbers they were talking about, and a couple times at this 2-day meeting, we were very fortunate that it only happened in, I think, Toronto and Calgary or something. So I got to come home to it was at the hotel where I could just drive home for lunch, kind of thing. So that was fortunate. Didn't have to take plane tickets and get a hotel room to attend these meetings. But several times we just kind of turned to each other and said, what are we doing here? Because by their definition, small producers were like 100,000 units a year or
Right.
something. You know,
Yeah.
we sell 1,000 units a year, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
They came back through, once everything was in place, I went to a meeting somewhere. I was the only one of my league, meaning little old me there, because it was mostly bigger players. But the two people doing the meeting were people who had just got their naturopath degree, but didn't have time to actually pursue a career yet. And the government wanted to hire people that were naturopaths so they could say they had an expert advisory council.
Yeah.
But really these people didn't know much yet because they hadn't started their practice,
Yeah.
right? And practice. So again, I was there with the gal who was teaching aromatherapy from Mount Royal College, and her and I looked at each other and said, what are we doing here? Because they had a pie chart with like a small business was 100 people or less.
Right.
And her and I were both just doing this ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm the staff.
Yeah.
And with this number of sales, there was no category for us.
Yeah.
So why are we wasting our time being here this morning?
Yeah.
You know, it was almost oppressive as a taxpayer to see what was going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, she said, yeah, I haven't, anyway. So I just quit with that. And then there was another occasion where come COVID time, it wasn't even something I had really wanted to do, but I had been making the Thieves Blend.
Oh, right.
Which you can get, if you look at enough history books, you can get the recipe for, because it really happened with these 4 famous robbers that were in France and eventually went to trial, and different versions of, even in encyclopedias that I've read, where the judge of the day said, individually, much of your crime has been petty theft, but combined, you guys have had quite a run here. But everybody is wondering how it is that you've been entering all these plague-stricken homes and neither of you've gotten sick. So you know something that would help a lot of people. And if you will cough up your recipe, I will either A, hang you instead of burning you at the stake. That was one version of the story.
Right.
The other one was it was dropped completely and they were just released.
Right.
I prefer that they were released, but even the hanging story is a good story.
Yeah.
So anyway, I said it's not even my recipe; it's in the history books. But I was prompted by one of my clients to make a hand sanitizer.
Right.
And there is a pharmaceutical definition of exactly what concentration of alcohol you need for it to work. And I wasn't adding any regular white alcohol, that's just grain alcohol, I think. So I wasn't using any, therefore it couldn't actually be a hand sanitizer,
Right.
even though all of the essential oils that are in the Thieves Blend have far more power than regular alcohol does.
Yeah.
So if anything, it was way stronger than any other hand sanitizer. So I had mixed some of the Thieves Blend into organic aloe vera gel so that we had a little travel thing.
Yeah.
And mistakenly, one of my clients put a big thing about that on their website. And some client, maybe her husband was a doctor, I don't know.
Right.
But somebody complained.
Yeah.
And it made it all the way to the HPB.
Right.
And I got a call from the office, and there was this whole, I'm going to be blunt and say, shit show that went on for a couple of days until I finally got the right person on the phone and said, well, how many thousand units have you been selling? Like, he pictured that I had this big operation going on.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it's currently in 4 stores. How much have you sold? 24.
Yeah.
And I could just hear this guy pausing at the other end of the phone. Why am I wasting my time with this guy? You know,
Yeah.
And he said, well, yeah, I just get it off the shelf, or somebody's going to pull it. But and I just agreed not to make that anymore. But I continued to formulate. That's the word I wanted earlier.
Right. Okay.
I continued to sell it to my own clients.
Right. The formula.
You know? So if somebody dropped in, I could sell it to you. I think.
You know, it shouldn't matter whether you're selling 12 or 12,000, right?
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. This is...
But the thing is, well, wait a minute. The only qualification there is that if I am selling you something that I made for you, we are in the position of I can tell you about any potential side effects,
right,
proper dosage, and everything else. But if it's going to go on a shelf where a completely untrained public can pick it up and read the label, and this gets back to it has to say one thing clearly.
Right.
Like an astringent blend, the same blend will keep your face looking younger, help you wean a child, or almost stop your hemorrhoids.
Yeah.
It's just something that shrinks tissue.
Yeah.
So you can use it on your butt or your face or your breasts, but somebody's only going to buy it for weaning if it says weaning formula.
Right.
If it says butt formula, they're not going to. See what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
That's just consumerism.
Yeah.
So, but that's the difference, is where we're in a position where it's my responsibility as the maker to make sure you understand the product fully.
Right.
And we can't get all that data onto a label.
No.
So back to this meeting with Ray, somebody in the room said, Blaine, you must have something in your bag, because they had a chart of she had this thing on I was surprised that they were still using even overhead projectors, I think. And it had all the information that had to be in Latin, French, and Canadian, or English, sorry. Sorry, French people. But 3 languages, and all of what it was good for, and it all had to be on the bottle.
Right.
And somebody said, and several of us were trying. The woman that was supporting me, I think, was from Longcomb. She was there because this also affected the beauty industry, right? And somebody said, Blaine, you must have something in your bag. And I found I don't think it was even a 4 ml vial, but they're the same size anyway. And I walked right up to this panel of about 8 people from Ottawa. And I kind of slammed this little vial down on top of the projector and said, show us how.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And the whole panel just kind of looked at each other and kind of went eyes wide. And, I said, if I take this product, which currently sells retail for $9.95, the only way I can conform with your standard here is to put it in a box this big with a booklet inside, and it's going to sell for at least $29.95.
Yeah.
So do we really have to go that far? And I had them.
Right.
It was interesting that I brought up at that meeting enough questions that at the breaks, the panel was coming to me with questions.
Right. Yeah.
So I obviously shook them up a bit.
Yeah.
But
yeah, this is what's required.
They
have no idea what they're doing.
It's ignorance based.
Yeah.
Really, that was my only point.
Yeah.
After all that.
Totally. Some bureaucrat, right? Like, even you mentioned, okay, a naturopath that's gone through naturopathic school, they probably got a certain amount of knowledge, but hardly any experience, right? If that's
but it looks good on the paper. Yeah.
Yeah, this kind of a thing, using as consultants to people that know, far less, and with different interests. Anyways, totally. If anybody wants to kind of get more into this, which you should, the kind of main organization, the main leader behind the resistance, shall we call it, is Sean Buckley. That's SHAWN Buckley, and he's with the NHPPA, Natural Health Products Protection Association. You can go to nhppa. I think it's org or com. You just type that in, Sean Buckley, and he's up to date, like literally by the day. He's doing webinars. So I got an email from him saying, sorry guys, it's gone through. They slipped it through, it's now law last night. And, here's our strategy. So he's kind of the main one that's leading the charge.
Wow.
And unfortunately, people like the CHFA, the Canadian Health Food Association, are not as helpful as they could be or should be, despite supposedly meant to be representing, health food.
And as a Canadian taxpayer, I have no right to know that this happened without us knowing.
Right? Yeah. Well, you make your vote once every 4 years, right? And that's all. That's democracy. That's all you get. And if your guy doesn't get in, then, well, too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll just learn how to speak English better and get dramatic.
Yeah.
That's what we can do.
Anyways, politics, bureaucrats. Yeah.
We're getting too political now.
Yeah. Well, we're
supposed to be herbalists.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not politicians.
But, yeah.
So we have to pay attention because we both love making things.
Yeah. No,
to help a lot of people.
Yeah. And
how many thousand people do you think you've helped?
Oh.
Just pick a real wild guess. 1 million? Maybe.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, in ripple effect, maybe. Like, I've taught directly several thousand people how to create their own chocolate, how to ferment, how to do all these things, and
and then they share the ideas with friends, neighbors, and friends.
Yeah.
Come to Betty's house for chocolate night, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of why I've also began to pivot to, helping the helpers, if you know what I mean. And we talked a little about it last time, as you've done, right? Okay, you're a herbalist to help others, but then you start training the herbalists so they can train other people. It's that multiplier effect.
Yeah.
And been trying to help people, herbalists, nutritionists, anybody in the holistic wellness kind of get the business side together.
People who are already a practitioner of some sort, including standard practice medicine people, are always my favorite students.
Yeah.
Because they already know a bunch, and you can kind of be a little bit more ahead of what we'd have to start with people that have no background at all.
Yeah.
I'd far rather always do classes with professionals. You can cover more ground faster.
Yeah. Yeah, where I think, for me, I'm maybe somewhere in the middle. People, they know a little bit. They're already on the path. They've taken 2 or 3 steps, and then I kind of help open the door, open the windows in that sense. I'm not here to convince anybody. If they're deep in the world of McDonald's and pharmaceuticals, and they're not willing to change, we're probably not having a conversation. But if the mind is open, then I can help steer in the right direction.
There was a face in the crowd on Sunday that I recognized, but I couldn't quite place. And she came up to me at the end of the show there.
Yeah.
And it's Kathy, it used to be from Cocky. Oh, Kathy, yeah.
Yeah.
And so this woman had phoned me and wanted to come and take my aromatherapy class, but had to let me know that she just had a baby and it was teething.
Right.
And would it be okay if she brought the baby to class? And I said, well, we've got a group of adults here that are leaving their own kids at home or hiring a babysitter or whatever, so I'd prefer to say no. But she said, but she's really good, she's really quiet, and how about I would just leave the room. If she fusses, I'll leave the room or just leave entirely or whatever. And so I kind of broke down and let her come. So the baby had been perfectly silent, and it was just getting to a place in the class where I was talking about my dental pain blend and clove oil being the first main ingredient, and the baby started fussing.
Right.
And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I said, "No, bring her up here."
Perfect. Good job. Right on.
So we got this little baby, and we rubbed a little bit of my dental pain on her gums, and she just, I don't know if I can snap my fingers anymore, just stopped.
Yeah.
She just stopped. These little baby eyes she just stopped.
Yeah.
And the whole class just looked at each other and went, wow. And the brilliant thing was that as the years went by, I told that story to every class I had after that. And came the day that little baby was grown up and a teenager. She was about 16 and wanted to take my course.
Oh.
So I got to tell the story
Right.
with her in the room.
Oh, no
and
way.
And then I turned and said,
Here's the baby.
there's Susie, or whatever her name was. This is the baby all growed up.
Yeah.
That was so cool. So I've been doing it just long enough to be multi-generational.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
it's cool.
Cool.
So we call it a day.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for those questions, those prompts. Feel free to post any comments, any questions down below.
And we'll keep doing what we can.
Yeah, share it with those that want to know. All right, bye for now.
Once again.